pra tu descer, então fica à vontade. Sacanagem com prazer pra ficar suave. Vem, menina, nesse clima que vai começar. Abre, fecha, trave, pena que cê vai gostar. Ela toma, 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 ela toma.
It's 15 hours.
Hey guys, this is the MC 1925 in Colombia, and we invite you to stand up and dance with us.
Right now the place get warm. You know see the place can't keep calm. Right now the place get warm. You know see the place can't keep calm. Look how long bad man I want them. See them make we have to go calm them. Look how long bad man I want them. See them make we have to go calm them. Watch it, 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 watch it. Tranquilo. Get warm. You know see the place can't keep calm. Right now the place get warm. You know see the place can't keep calm. Look how long bad man I want them. See them make we have to go calm them. Look how long bad man I want them. See them make we have to go calm them. Watch it, 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 watch it. Tranquilo.
We are very excited to have you here. We also have a very, very special guest. But before I introduce this guest to you, I have another guest that is here. And this guest is Corina Alonso, as you might guess from the name in the picture. So Cori, welcome on stage. How are you doing, Cori?
Good, I'm doing really, really good. I'm super energized for the last day of the conference.
This is very, very good. So today the day will be all about self-awareness. So this is also what our last speaker will be talking about. So Cori, what does self-awareness mean to you in terms of leadership?
For me, it's really, really important that leaders are self-aware, because it's about understanding what are your personal strengths and weaknesses and how you can actually implement them and also collaborate to others to have a better result. So if I'm aware of what are my weak points or my blind spots and what are the things that I'm good at, then I can do a better contribution to the team and also a better contribution for the whole network or for the whole people in the country or in your local communities or wherever this is.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is very, very important in terms of leadership. And what are you most looking forward to today?
I'm really, really looking forward to my track with my VPs, because then we can get all together again and find some amazing solutions for these times and show that we're actually leaders who are solution-oriented and looking forward to these times.
Thank you very much, Corey. So I guess now it's time to introduce you our guest. And our guest is someone very, very special. You might know this person. It's Chris. He was our MCP in 17-18. So I hope you are very, very excited to see and hear what he has to say about self-awareness in terms of leadership. Stay tuned.
Zeit, dass das Feuer wieder startet. Wir bringen mal wieder eine Granate vorbei. Von der ersten bis zur letzten Etage. So von dem Mann right.
Ich reite ein in den Club mit meinem Team. Die Leute sind am Abstellen, wenn wir übernehmen. Heute Abend wird gebaut, wir lassen den Boden beben. Das Duell ist eröffnet, die Fetzen können fliegen. Boom! Desperados, Super Bowl, Halbzeitshow. Hier rollt das Candela Rodeo. Desperados, einmal um die Welt wie die Stones. Tiefer als Juban, dicker Low, low, low.
Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone.
Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.
Barrikaden aus Boxen und Verstärkern, Molotow-Cocktails aus Wörtern, Beats ballern besser fliegen durch die Luft. Showdown, baby, let's roll.
Übernehmen mal wieder die Dancehall. Alle Pferde gehen mit dir durch wie Bonanza. Volles Rohr, wir rollen wie ein Panzer. Machen wieder aus dem Montag einen Samstag. Desperados, Super Bowl, Halbzeitshow. Hier rollt das Candela Rodeo. Desperados, einmal um die Welt wie die Stones. Tiefer als Juban, dicker Low, low, low.
Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone.
Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.
Wir reiten, wir rollen, wir verlieren aber voll die Kontrolle. Wir fallen, wir fliegen, wenn wir fallen, wenn wir wieder siegen. Wir lieben, wir streiten, wir überwinden die übelsten Pleiten. Kein Zweifel, wir riden low.
Ride it like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone.
Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.
I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. I don't know if you can, but I will just keep talking. Guys, so happy to see you. I'm Chris. I'm the former MCP of ISIG in Germany, actually. And today I'm here in order to tell you a little bit about self-awareness and tell you my story with self-awareness. And I remember when Fenya was asking me to deliver that session, I immediately had to think of my favorite quote, the quote that brought me through my time as an MCP, and specifically one part of it. And that part was, the purpose of life is to give you a chance to be the grandest version of the greatest vision ever you held about who you are. And that quote for me represents the power of self-awareness and what self-awareness is all about. So in order to get into the session, I would want to ask you, if you think on self-awareness and if you think of the one person that is reflecting it most for you, who is your role model? Who is the person that for you represents self-awareness the most? Write it in the comments. Maybe I'll be able to see it. I hope so. And take the first person that comes to your mind. Don't think for long. Just take the first person that comes to your mind that is representing self-awareness the most for you and put it in the comments. I saw Yule Diggers. Yule Diggers is actually one of my favorite persons as well. And I saw a few more. Who do we have? Haruna more? Me. Well, nice. Okay, well, keep that person in mind and keep that person in mind throughout the whole session, because role models is what we can orient ourselves on in our own development. But today, I'm going to tell you a story of self-awareness that I experienced throughout my time in ISAC. And not only one story, but I'm trying to give you three stories that shaped me and myself and who I am today and what I do today, and that made me reflect on what I'm good at, what I want to do, and where I come from. So that are the three stories that I'm going to talk about today. And for those of you that don't know me, I don't know who it still does, so I'm just giving you some context. In ISAC, I started in ISAC in Frankfurt. ISAC in Frankfurt is still an incredible LC. I hope. And I started there as a member, became LCVP Finance, then went to LCP. After LCP, I wasn't EP, so I actually went on exchange myself and came back and became MCP of ISAC in Germany. From there, went to ISAC International and became AIVP. So these are just the roles and they don't mean anything. What is more important is to check where do you come from and where you are now, because this is how you can best tell about change. So let's start in where I come from and how I entered ISAC. What was the beginning of all this? And I still remember, I was definitely not the best member you could imagine. Actually, not at all. I was a finance student in Frankfurt, and what do finance students in Frankfurt like to do? They like to check how can they be different from the others, how can they be a little bit better, what can they do in order to separate themselves. So I did the same, and I was like, let's join some student organization. So I was Googling student organizations in Frankfurt, and what do you notice? What do you notice on that list? ISAC is mentioned first because it starts with an A. So I went on that list and I clicked on the link. I was like, oh, it's about exchange. I've been in other countries as well. I like it. Let's try it out. So that's how I applied to ISAC, and that's how I got in. So completely for the wrong reasons, not for purpose, not for development, but just for doing something. And that is where I started. So just giving you a context, I definitely was not the best possible member you could imagine. But now looking where I am now, just for you as a context, I'm now working for a company I admire. And after I left ISAC, or when I was in the last time in my AIVP term, I was thinking, where could I go to? What company could I apply to? What role could I apply to? And I made a matrix. I made myself a Google table about the criteria that matter for me when choosing my job. And basically, it all nailed down to three main points. I wanted to find a company that is reflecting my purpose and what I want to achieve in my life, and that is acting for that purpose. Second, I wanted to find a job that I can use my strength in, and I considered my strength to be building purposeful partnerships. So I wanted a job that represents that, but I also wanted a job that is aligned to my vision and what I want to do with my life and where I want to be. And I did always say that I want to, be a leader that is doing something for the better. And these three criteria were all given in LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's purpose is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. My purpose is equality and opportunity. So it's 100% aligned. My strengths are there in the role that I'm having, because now I'm building these partnerships and I'm working for a company that has such a strong leadership path that is very likely to be going in the direction of what I want to achieve for myself. But the thing is, I'm not the only ex-ISICer in LinkedIn. There's actually quite some. And I wanted to show you something that I thought stood out, which is the numbers of their goal achievement since they started in LinkedIn. These people all started.
Next tonight, a star quarterback's refusal.
Achieve continuously. You know, you see people there having 120% goal achievement, 135%, 198%, and the LinkedIn average is 85%. But why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this to see and to understand that the time that Isaac gave these people actually contributed to the success they are having in their moment right now. And why do they have that? Because Isaac developed what? Isaac developed the 4 leadership qualities, the definition of what we call leadership. And these 4 leadership qualities are what makes them and what made them so successful. So now I'm focusing today on one of them, self-awareness, and I wanted to make it a little bit more understandable for you by bringing you 3 examples from my Isaac time and how they shaped my self-awareness and how they are contributing to where I am right now on LinkedIn. So looking back at the positions I had and the titles and so on, more important is the experiences behind it. And I will start with my experience as an LCP of Isaac in Frankfurt. And for this, just giving you a little context, you remember that first name, Isaac, in the list. So I joined for the wrong reasons, as I just said. And then you have to imagine a finance student from Frankfurt joining the first MilenCo. This was called the Newest Introduction Conference. So it was the first conference we went to. And I was there. And the first thing I saw when I entered the plenary was, you know, people dancing, roll calls. I was like, what is this? Because I found it very, very weird at the beginning. And I couldn't identify with it at all. And I was like, this is, I don't know if this is right for me and if it's the right place for me to be at. But I stayed and I went through the conference, and actually later on I understood where roll calls come from, what purpose they have, and why they exist. And one moment in the biggest international conference of Isaac, I did see people from different generations, over 120 countries dancing the same roll call, and I understood the purpose of why we have these roll calls. But at that time, at that MilenCo, I didn't understand. But I stuck with it because I liked what they said about it. I was not 100% convinced yet, but I liked the idea of Isaac, so I was like, I'm staying. And I did learn to be more open-minded, be more open to different views, different personalities, and that's what happened in that conference. But I also understood more how to work in a team, as I was in quite a big team in that finance team, and it became even bigger when I became LCVP Finance. So when you see this picture, don't be shocked, but this was my finance team. So we actually had 8 people in a finance team. Don't do that right now. Don't do that anymore. It was a big mistake. The team was way too big for what we would have to do. But I formed a team. You know, they said, hey, you're LCVP now and you can recruit who you want. And I was like, oh, really? So I'm recruiting all my friends and make them part of my team. So yeah, as you can see, I was not a perfect member. I was definitely also not a perfect LCVP. I did a lot of mistakes in that regard, but I had a great time with that team, and I actually did learn a few things. For example, how do you build a team, and how do you build a culture, and how do you motivate and keep it going, especially if they don't have enough to do. And how do you manage yourself as well to combine it with the job I had, the university I had, and the responsibilities I had as a VP Finance. And so I learned these things as an LCVP, but I did also learn one other thing, because in that time as an LCVP, I was actually being an EP buddy as well for one of my by now closest friends. His name is Hiram, and he was a global coordinator at PwC, but I had no idea what that was at that time. But I was his buddy, and I organized, a flat for him and everything that you do as a buddy. And I remember when he came to Frankfurt, and we had so many conversations, in the evenings, and he told me more about his country. As he came from Mexico, he did tell me, how Mexico at the time in Mexico shaped him, but also what matters for Mexico right now, because that was the year where this bus of students in Mexico got kidnapped and didn't show up anymore. And so that was something I was not at all aware about, but him telling me these stories made me clearer what happens in Mexico. So it also did contribute to my world citizenship. But now going to the actual story of LCP, and when I became LCP, I was still not the perfect LCP member, by far not. And I also would say in my first half of the LCP term, I was not a good LCP at all. But I went to one national conference, and in that national conference, they showed a video, and that video was summarizing kind of everything that happened in the time where I was LCP. So I brought a part of it here to you, and I would ask Mano if you could put on that video.
Next tonight, a star quarterback's refusal to stand during the national anthem.
This country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all. And it's not happening for all right now.
I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Whatever you want. Grab them by the pussy.
And I can't believe that I'm saying that a candidate for president of the United States has bragged about sexually assaulting women.
And in a stunning upset that reverberated around the world.
Donald Trump won with 306 electoral votes, even though Hillary Clinton got nearly 2.5 million more popular votes.
This political stuff is nasty and it's tough.
But please, never stop believing that fighting for what's right is worth it.
That girl is a real crowd, please.
Thousands fled Aleppo after government forces recaptured large portions of the city from rebel fighters.
Tens of thousands of terrified civilians are streaming out of eastern Aleppo on foot.
The UN Weather Agency says 2016 could break the record for the hottest year since they started keeping track in the 19th century.
Eventually, history suggests there will be some doomsday event.
The path this country's taken has never been a straight line. We zig and zag.
For many, many thousands of years, people had looked up and wondered about what was up there.
The alternative is to become a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species.
And we must consider ourselves among the most fortunate of all generations, for we have lived at a time when the dream became a reality.
I hope you would agree that is the right way to go. Yes?
So that video summarizes just a few things that happened in the time in which I was LCP, but I remember I saw it and I realized I was living in a time where borders became attractive again, and separating people based on skin color, based on nationality was a trend. I was living in a time where Donald Trump became president of the United States and actually, talked about sexually harassing women before. And there was a time in which I was LCP, and I remember I looked at it and I realized this is nothing I want to accept. This is something I want to change, and I developed this hunger to change something. And I remember after that I went home from that conference, and I did have some conversations with EPs about their experiences that they had abroad. And they told me about what they learned and what they learned in their exchanges. People that got more understanding for different cultures, maybe also for different religions, different skin colors. And I realized, you know what? Actually, exchange drives change. And so if I want to change something, I can do it by taking action for Isaac. So at that time, when I realized that, everything changed, because then in the middle of the term, I changed my whole idea of what I do as an LCP, and only because I realized this and how I can change something, only because of that, I developed the discipline and the goal orientation necessary to drive change. More importantly, I learned how to start a movement. And I did start that movement together with my team, together with my EP, in my LC of Isaac in Frankfurt. And we had this, we had this ambition to do 99 exchanges You know, we created that stand of Einer von uns, which means one of us. So it was about unity. It was about Isaac in Frankfurt being the best LC in Germany, not for the sake of being the best, but for the sake of it showing how much willing we were to drive change. And so this is what we united ourselves behind. And you have to understand for that, we were an LC that came from 40 exchanges in the year before. So it was actually more than 100% growth. And we said, okay, we can do it. And we will unite the team behind it and the LC behind it. And we actually did it. In the end, we ended up with more than 115 exchanges and even overachieved these 99. Why? Because everyone in that LC was willing to change something. So that is where I understood my vision, and what I want to do with my life is to develop and to drive leadership for the better, and be a leader that changes things for the better, creates movements, creates teams that will drive change. And that is what I understood what I want to do in my life. And that is the first story of LCP. Now, telling you the second story of AIVP and the time that I had there, I understood my strength and what I'm good at. And I don't know, maybe some of you might know this project that is called Feed the Planet. Let me see if this clicks. The project Feed the Planet, what this is about is it's about how can we bring responsible consumption to children all over the world and educate on how to be more sustainable in consumption behavior. And I remember I came, in my role as AIVP for partnerships, I came to Electrolux, and the first meeting we had, we basically just had a sheet of paper and an idea of what we would want to achieve, but no clear plan of how we could achieve it. So we were sitting and we were building some ideas, and we built a framework and so on. And in the end, we came up with a project that then was made reality. And that project was about driving GV exchanges in order to have volunteers educating children on how to drive responsible consumption. In the end, it turned out to be a project in 14 countries with 300 volunteers that educated 30,000 children in just 1 year on responsible consumption. And that time, when I saw this project reality and when I talked to the children, I realized one of my biggest strengths is to build partnerships that have a purpose and to, you know, bring organizations together to drive projects for a purpose. So I understood this is my strength, and this is the strength I want to apply in what I do. So I'm going to the last story, and that for sure is the most powerful story. And that story is the story of how I was an EP. And as an EP, I went to Colombia. Going for a volunteering project. And remember, I told you about this time as an LCP and how I wanted to, you know, drive results and so on. So I thought, what can I do to drive these results as well? Maybe I could potentially match myself. So I matched myself to go to Colombia, and this time in Colombia was the time where I actually understood the power of the stories we create in Isaac. And I went there. I was not there alone on this project, but I was there with people from, I think it was around 30 people from more than 15 countries. And we were there, and maybe, you know, one or two of the people were there with me in the project. You might know Louis, I think in LCVP now, and actually in Frankfurt. At that time, he was there in that exchange as well, and you can talk about it with him. Contact him and ask him how did he get to that. You know, how did he get to Germany? And maybe this was also a little bit influenced by this project. But I didn't want to tell you that story. I wanted to tell you the story of how I came there, and I realized I was matching myself to Colombia. I didn't talk with my dad or my family before, and my dad actually tried to tell me not to go to Colombia. He said, "Don't go there. It's a dangerous country. You might know, I mean, you might know the picture of Colombia that you get from Netflix series like Narcos." So he had that image of Colombia. He was like, "Don't go. It's too dangerous." And I still went because I was old enough to decide on my own, and I went there. And I was not only experiencing the culture of Colombia, but I was also experiencing the culture of each and every one that was there in this project. I had conversations with them. I understood a lot more about their culture. And I also understood that, Colombia is not at all dangerous. It's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. And I got to love it. I got to love its culture. I got to love its, the joy of living they had there. And I remember how I was working with these students in that project, and they were all university students. And I did remember one conversation I had with one of the students, and she said, actually, our biggest limit are the mountains around Medellin. So he said, we cannot go beyond these mountains. We're stuck here in Medellin. And I was so shocked by this, because I really believe that a lot of them are a lot smarter than myself, but they don't have the same chances, the same opportunities, maybe because they are not European, or maybe because they are not Christian, or maybe because they are not male or heterosexual, or all these attributes that unfairly make you more privileged in the world. And I realized this is the purpose I'm trying to follow, and the purpose that I want to change, to drive more equality in the world, so that statements like this don't have to be done. So that was the story of my exchange, and I wanted to end it with one picture. Right here, you're seeing part of the group on the boat of where we went to an island and on the last weekend of our exchange. And I took this picture because I think the faces just they represent the beauty of this exchange and how it unites us. But I also took that picture because I have another picture in the exact same boat, just 1 year later. And that picture is a picture of my dad that I brought to Colombia after that exchange, and that I showed him the country of how I perceived it, to also change his mindset and his belief, to actually realize the beauty of the Colombian culture. And that is just a story that I wanted to leave with you with, the last story of how I got aware about my purpose through an Isaac experience. And so when you look at what I told you before of how I chose my position that I have now in LinkedIn, you can see it's built on exactly these three elements. The purpose I understood in the exchange, the strength I understood in my role as an AIVP, and the vision and what I want to achieve with my life that I understood as an LCP. So that is how I wanted to tell you my story of self-awareness, and I wanted to leave you with the rest of this quote, because of course I do know that we are not in an easy position. I do know you guys are in the most difficult position I could ever imagine in the current times, but that's why I wanted to show you the rest of the stories, because yes, the purpose of life is to give you a chance to be the grandest version of the greatest vision ever you held about who you are. And challenges are what you came for, and you are never ever given a challenge you cannot overcome. So when challenges arrive, then move straight to clarity, that this is what you came for. Now rise to this occasion and know that you have every resource with which to create the right and perfect outcome. That's the quote I wanted to leave you with. It gave me strength in my time in Isaac, and I hope it gives you some strength. Thank you very much for having me running this opening of the last day. I'm giving it to Carol now to explain you the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the day and see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, it seems that you did not hear me. So the agenda for today, we are about to finish the opening, and then we'll have two different blocks. So for VPs and team leaders, we have a functional track, so the functional closing. Then for members and experienced members, we have soft and hard skills courses. And then we have two more blocks of soft and hard skills courses. And then we'll come back together again on YouTube for the real closing of the conference. So we hope you enjoy the day and see you later. Bye-bye.
Höchste Zeit, dass das Feuer wieder startet. Wir bringen mal wieder eine Granate vorbei. Von der ersten bis zur letzten Etage, Top on the Rhythm and Ride.
Ich reite ein in den Club mit meinem Team. Die Leute sind am Upstayen, wenn wir übernehmen. Heute Abend wird gebaut, wir lassen den Boden beben. Das Duell ist eröffnet, die Fetzen können fliegen. Boom!
Desperados, Super Bowl, Halbzeitshow. Hier rollt das Candela Rodeo. Desperados, einmal um die Welt wie die Stones. Tiefer als die U-Bahn, dicker Low, low, low.
Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.
Barrikaden aus Boxen und Verstärkern. Molotow-Cocktails aus Wörtern. Beats ballern besser fliegen durch die Luft. Showdown, baby, let's roll.
Übernehmen mal wieder die Dancehall. Alle Pferde gehen mit dir durch wie Bonanza. Volles Rohr, wir rollen wie ein Panzer. Machen wieder aus dem Montag einen Samstag.
Desperados, Super Bowl, Halbzeitshow. Hier rollt das Candela Rodeo. Desperados, einmal um die Welt wie die Stones. Tiefer als die U-Bahn, dicker Low, low, low.
Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.
Wir reiten, wir rollen, wir verlieren immer voll die Kontrolle. Wir fallen, wir fliegen, wenn wir fallen, wenn wir wieder siegen. Wir lieben, wir streiten, wir überwinden die übelsten Pleiten. Kein Zweifel, wir riden low.
Ride it like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Rollin', roll like a rolling stone. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo. Jump, jump, hype on the rhythm, come. Ready, ready, ride the rhythm groove now. Come again, set on it. Ride the rhythm like a rodeo.